Welcome to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show with me, Jess Tomlinson. Interviews to inspire a new movement of leaders and entrepreneurs. The ones who lead with vulnerability and authenticity, stand in visibility, allowing themselves to truly be seen, are fierce and playful and sexy. Choose business as a spiritual practice. Seek collaboration versus competition. No, giving back is not an option. It's a necessity. They do it their way. They radiate. They rise. Now, let's rise together. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Radiantpreneur Rising Show. I am Jess Tomlinson, and I am so excited, so thrilled to have my new friend, a person who I found on social media, and I just instantly felt like I have to have her on the show. She is such a bright light, and we've actually never talked before, so this is going to be kind of a fun interview where I'll be getting to know her, and you will too. Please welcome Isabella Baring. Did I say the last name right? Usually I check. Baring?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Jess. It's really so beautiful to connect with you, and yeah, just everything that you share is so beautiful, and I definitely resonate. So I'm so happy to be here with you.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a lot of core missions, it feels like, in common, like as I was feeling connected to you, and yet we do it in really different ways. So I'm so excited to dive into that. And before we do, I want to ask you the first question, which is, how are you right now in your life and business leaning into visibility edges?
Great question. So it's definitely been a big block for me, visibility, in terms of like online, in person. Like I've worked with people for many years in person, and then just last year I decided to really step into the online space. I moved out of Melbourne, out of the city, into the country. So, not as many people out here. I'm out in the bush, and so online is obviously, the way to go for me now. And so last year, when I first started going to the online space, I did like an 8-day video challenge, and that was just a huge step up for me. Like just speaking on video, I'd never done that before on Facebook Live, and like obviously, yeah, so much kind of was coming up for me at that time, but I just kept doing it, kept showing up every day. And then, yeah, by the end, I felt like I had just stepped into this new version of me. And so that was kind of where really being seen began for me in that online kind of space. But it's an ongoing journey, as I'm sure you know, because recently I've found myself really like stepping away from that. And to be honest, what happened was, like, when I had that first kind of breakthrough, it was so like exciting, and all these people, giving you so much attention because they've never seen you like so deeply before. And then, when you keep going and you keep going, and then, a lot of the attention and stuff kind of starts to like, slow down. And then that brings up a whole nother layer of the self-worth and self-work and all of that. And it's like, do people even care what I'm saying? Do people care what I'm doing? And then to just keep going no matter what, it can be really challenging. But it's also, that's part of the process, and that's why we're doing this work, to just keep showing up. But what I have been doing recently is just tuning in more and more to what feels really good for me with it. So not pushing myself to do a live video if that's not what I want to do, like really feeling into, what do I want to do? If I could do anything in this moment, what would I want to do? And so often that is actually for me like creating a video, like I'm recording something with my nice camera, and really making it like a piece of art, rather than just you know, chatting casually on a Facebook Live, like making something really special. And that's what I've been really enjoying lately. So I'm sure I'll keep doing both. But for me, it's always like tuning into what do I really want, what feels really good for me right now, and then just trusting that that is always going to be perfect.
Yeah. I love that. I love your journey of, really doing the uncomfortable switch to coming out a little
Yeah.
bit more online and feeling into that like energetic expansion of like, oh my gosh, I'm being seen. And I totally know what that
Yeah.
feels like. And the contraction of like, wait a minute, am I not being seen? It's such an interesting journey. So I'm curious for you, like, and I also love that you're like attuning to yourself and feeling out like what form of visibility feels good, which is so important to like let go of all those like, shoulds. I totally,
Yeah.
that's something I find that the more I do that, the more energy I have to actually be able to, show up. So
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, what, aside from the attuning to yourself, is there anything else that you've really found helps you in continuing to show up in your visibility? Since it sounds like you still have to do the online thing, right? Since you're kind of out in the boonies. So what are some of the other things that helps you be able to shine your light?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, it's focusing on the things that I love most.
Mm.
So, you know, like as you know from my social media, like singing is the most, you know, the most magical, special tool for me that I use. And so, for me, like there's all these practices that I do, but you know, writing little medicine songs that help me to work through whatever's coming up for me, or doing some channeling and downloading to clear whatever patterns are arising, or to activate like new beliefs, new patterns within me, so that I can feel full enough to do that. And you know, really like, yeah, finding that energy within me, and then and then sharing it in whatever way. So yeah, I guess just always leaning into my practices. And uh yeah, like recently I have decided that I am going to start working with people in person again, and I feel like that's going to be really important to just cultivate that sense of in-person connection again, because it's something that I have really kind of lost touch with in recent months since moving out here. And so I'm really looking forward to just cultivating that in-person visibility of like just really being seen for who I am, and not being this, you know, not being online all the time. And then I feel like that's going to really help me to feed into the online space of just being a lot more real, a lot more authentic, without all those pressures, you know, because I think so many of us, we put this pressure on ourselves when we're online, that we've got to put on this, you know, this online persona. And it's like, I'm sure, yeah, we all kind of go through that, and it's finding that balance of what, you know, where you do want to sit, because you don't have to show like every single part of you. You can be authentic and still not show every single part, but it's like finding that really sweet spot where it feels really, really good. And so I think I'm coming into that now, and it is finding this balance between, you know, real in-person authentic connection, and then kind of with the online space, you know, just finding that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I always tell my clients, the reason why I'm visible online is actually just to begin to build trust with people before I get to meet them
Mm.
in person. And while, I do have some people that I've never met in person, most of my clients at some point I've met in person, and then they've decided to work with
Mm.
me. And it's been something that like I've really had a hard time. I sometimes get really frustrated about it because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing so much, I'm super visible. I'm like, visibility is my thing. And
Yeah.
yet what I notice time and time again is that for me, that's just something that has to happen, at least for now, maybe not in the
Mm.
future, but And I believe that it is because of that core piece. Like, people are craving in-person connection, and that's something that I love so much.
Mm.
And gosh, like, we're craving it, right? It's like,
Yeah.
one of my mentors, Lissa Rankin. Have you ever heard of her?
No.
No? Okay, you'd probably love her. She's like she's a doctor, but she's also very into like shamanic medicine and healing. She
Mm.
lives here in the Bay Area in Marin, California. And she did a TED Talk, and it was like called The Number One Public Health Crisis. And it was all about how we're lacking like intimacy, like physical touch and closeness and connection, essentially. I can't remember exactly the word that she used, but that's the gist of it. And so I love that, yeah, you're adding that back into your work. I just,
And I think, yeah, it's a different kind of energy that you have with people as well. Like, they are only seeing a part of you online, and then when you meet people, they're just, you can feel all of them, you know. And it's just so different. Like, I remember when I first started running online workshops compared to in-person workshops, like the energy was just so different, because suddenly I was just here alone. And of course you can feel the group energy of the other people that are on the call, but it's so different to, yeah, being in the room together, because I've found when I'm in the room together, it brings me into this state of like pure presence, where we're kind of co-creating this. And then when I was online just by myself, and they're all there, and I can still like feel it, but it's just not, doesn't take me over. And so I really had to learn how to stay fully present still, and not be like not be getting distracted or that kind of thing, because it is just really different. Like, it's just you and that's it.
yeah, like really having to, it's almost like, I always talk about this and I feel a little weird, but it's just one of my ways that I'm able to actually like be present when I, record videos. I've done tons of Facebook Lives, and, I was just telling you before we hit record that my partner, Ben, is a professional videographer, and like, we're taking women to Bali to film their brand videos this year in October. And, um, and what I do when I record videos by myself, or when I go on Facebook Live, is I actually look at myself. It's like a weird channeling. And maybe you know something about this, because I know a lot of your work is channeling and self-expression. But I always feel weird admitting that to my clients, of like, that's one way that I stay focused. It's almost like I'm talking to myself. Do you ever find that? It's super weird.
Well, I don't really look at myself so much, because I try to like look in the camera thing, like,
yeah.
so I kind of keep my attention there. But what I do love to do is, after I've recorded a video, is watch it back. Like, if it's a Facebook Live, even though, I don't need to watch it to edit it or anything, just watching it back and like really holding myself in that unconditional love. And every time, like, sometimes I'll do a video and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what was I even saying? Like, that probably made no sense. That was terrible. And then I'll be like, all right, just watch it back. And so then I watch it back, and I'm always so like surprised at how beautiful I am, how like, the amazing things that I was saying. And I just kind of watch it in that space of unconditional love. And it's so beautiful, because after I've done that, then I don't care if it gets no likes, if it gets no attention or whatever. It doesn't matter, because I'm seeing me. And I feel like that's, going back to your visibility thing, it's like the biggest kind of shift for me in terms of visibility was stopping caring about if anyone else was seeing me, and just choosing to see myself. And I'm like, if I'm the only one that sees me, like, that is enough, because I am, so perfect and beautiful. And as long as I'm getting to experience my unique divine expression, which is, what my consciousness is here to do. Like, no one else gets to see me when I'm just home alone, or, doing my daily things. Like, I'm the one that gets to witness myself. And that is the beautiful thing. And that is the gift. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Can you share a little bit about that journey of how have you come to this place of being able to actually see yourself? Because I think this is a piece that so many people are just really need healing around, holding themselves in that compassion and self-love. So do you have anything you'd like to share around that journey?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I've always had a big thing about reflection. So like everything in my world is a reflection of me. And so when I started to notice that things were coming up around, I'm not being seen or things are not being heard, I would just immediately turn it back. It's like, where am I not seeing myself? Where am I not hearing myself? And so using it as this form of self-work. And so just inquiring into that, and then seeing what comes up. But really, probably the biggest thing for me has been mirror work. So I started, like, I've always done lots of affirmations and things, but when I started actually doing them like in the mirror and really seeing myself, I just started to see like myself in a way that I'd never seen myself, and like hearing my voice in a way I'd never heard my voice, and just seeing this like sparkle that that other people were always seeing, but I never spent that time. Like, obviously when I was a teenager, like most of us, I would either look in the mirror and be like popping my pimples, or like doing all of these things, and then like, or I'd be like putting on this much makeup and that kind of thing. So I never really had like the relationship that I had with my reflection in the mirror was was very different. And then one day it just started to shift, and I just was looking in the mirror one day and I started to hear like my little personality voice like talking in my head to myself, and I was like, oh, I'm so cute. Like and then there was this kind of one really significant moment where I'd just broken up with my first love, my first serious boyfriend. And I'd broken up with him as an act of self-love, because we'd gotten together when I was in this kind of partying, letting loose phase just after high school. And I'd moved on from that, and I'd had this kind of spiritual awakening, and he was still really in that place. And so I realized, I just can't be around someone that's taking drugs and this kind of thing and drinking so much. And so I broke up with him as this act of self-love. And then just a couple of weeks later, I went to this Tantra workshop, had this really kind of big shift, this kind of Kundalini awakening experience. And I remember the next day just like looking into the mirror and just being like, oh my God, I friggin' love you. Like, it was just, I'd never loved myself so deeply and just seen how truly beautiful I am. And I just had this, like, I don't know how long it was, but it was like half an hour or an hour of just like being like so totally overcome with this sense of love. And then from there it just kind of grew, and I started making it this practice. And now I haven't been doing it as much lately, but I just love eye gazing with myself and singing a lot of affirmations and things that I sing. I like to sing them into the mirror. And I just love to witness this expression. Like, I feel like it's really, with me, self-love has gone beyond just learning to love my expression of who I am. Like, at the start, I feel like self-love was, I had to learn to like love my body and love my personality and love, all of the expressions of me. But now it's like I just am the love, and I'm just witnessing it all with love, and it doesn't really matter like what I am or what I look like or anything. It's just so amazing to experience.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's just so beautiful. It's like what I heard is you've become your own lover, like just like
Yeah.
your own divine lover. And just, wow, I really feel like that healing alone is just could change everything so much for
Yeah.
people. Just really falling in love with ourselves. For me, one practice that really helped um, was I got it from the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0. Have you ever
Yeah.
read those books? Yeah.
No.
Okay. I don't know. I don't really know how to explain the book except for, most people kind of know what emotional intelligence is now, being aware of our emotions. And there's two different, like self-aware and socially aware, as far as the book kind of explains it. And I felt really fortunate back in my corporate days. This was probably like, gosh, I don't even know how many years ago now, maybe like 7 years ago that I brought that book into my workplace. I was working at an airline at the time and asked if I could teach the executives and management this book,
Oh,
Emotional Intelligence. Yeah. And it was really interesting because there's a quiz about like finding out your emotional intelligence, your EQ versus your IQ. Anyways, one of the practices in that book is imagining, I think they say like an eagle, and I like to think of it as like an eagle, but you can really think of it as any animal, but an eagle like soaring above you and witnessing you down below. And that just, I still use it to this day, like this beautiful, like kind of higher loving mama version of myself, just witnessing and watching down and saying, wow, look at you. Like, you're so amazing. Even when I like, fuck up or like do all these, things that to the human world might seem really like horrible, or I beat myself up, like, it's just a really cool practice. And I love the mirror work too. I've done a lot of that. We are such amazing beings, right? Just like,
so amazing. Yeah. And I resonate with the eagle thing. Like, I think it is pretty similar to what I do. For me, I just call that source. So I'm like, even if I'm feeling really disconnected from myself, I imagine like, what would my source be thinking about me now? And so it just takes you into that place of witness, and, separates you from that kind of, the everyday experience, and just connects you with the truth, the ultimate truth of reality. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's talk about your singing, because that's how I found you. I don't even know how I found you on Instagram, but I stopped and watched this video of you singing, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this woman is pure light. And like I kept listening to you because it just felt so good in my body. And I know you talk about like the DNA changing, right? And so I'd love for you to just talk about, first of all, how did this come about? Is this a gift that you've always had, or how did you discover it? And like, what are the benefits of singing? We can go so many directions with this, so let's just start there.
Let's just start there. Perfect. So yeah, I've sung pretty much my whole life. As children, most of us do sing and dance. We're naturally expressive. And then I feel like people either go one of two ways. They either then decide they're not good enough and kind of shut it down, or they go into like the traditional path of like learning how to, doing singing lessons or that kind of thing. So I started in the choirs and stuff at school. And then when I was a bit older, I started singing lessons, and I did like a bit more kind of classical technical training. But I was never very good at the technique. I was always, a bit more of a pop singer. And I think it was the Spice Girls that began my journey with singing. Like, I remember I was in kindergarten and we were singing "Stop Right Now, Thank You Very Much." And and so I just always loved to sing. And I was in all the musicals at school and all of that, but I never really got the main parts because my voice was never very strong. It was always quite just kind of very like fine and pure. And so I was much more of like as I said, a pop singer. I wrote a lot of songs. Songwriting was kind of my way of processing emotions when I was younger. So during high school, I would just write songs. And it's so interesting looking back at them now. Like they're beautiful, but they're, so much like inner kind of torment that we go through as teenagers. And just seeing that like so clearly, like I would literally write out like my deepest, darkest things in these songs, and all of these problems about boys and all of these, like just insecurities and all of these things. Yeah, oh my gosh. Anyway, so that was my dream, was to become a famous singer. So I was actually really pursuing that. I started recording all of my songs and making demos, talking to managers. And then it kind of all reached this peak point where I'd had this audition with this manager, and she was like, okay, I'm setting up an audition for you at Universal Music. You're going to come, like, I'm going to get you signed, all of this stuff. And I was just like, yes, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then she sent me this contract, and I got my parents and their lawyer to look over it. And pretty much she just like wanted to take all of the money, and just, you know, it was just not a good deal at all. So I decided to say no. And that was really a fork in my road. When I said no, I just kind of, you know, went this other direction. And actually what happened was I just stopped singing. I think this part of me maybe just like gave up, or just wasn't sure how it would happen. And you know, growing up in this society as well, we're always told like it's really hard to make money, like being an artist, or you know, like it's really hard to make it, like you have to have a backup plan, like all of this. So even through my life, I'd always had a backup plan, like if I didn't make it as a singer, you know, I would do something else. And so I think there's, you know, there's a lot in that is quite self-sabotaging, you know, because if you want a dream like that, you got to go for it 100%. And I wasn't, you know, fully there. So at that time, I'd also just finished school. And so I'd been like the biggest high achiever at school, like totally, you know, in, you know, as I said, all the musicals, doing all the sports, doing every single co-curricular activity, and then getting like the top marks. And so I was just this like star kind of student. And then when I finished school, I was just finally free, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I can just do whatever I want. So I started just like really letting loose and enjoying myself and partying and that kind of thing, which was like, I'm so grateful I had that time, because I obviously had to balance
we have such similar stories.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
I love it. Carry on.
Yeah. And so, yeah, so when I said no to that opportunity, that's when I was like, fuck it, you know, I'll just do whatever I want. And so I just really was enjoying myself, but I just stopped singing. And I guess I was being creative in other ways. Like I was dancing a lot at clubs and stuff, if that counts.
Totally counts. Totally counts.
Yeah. And then I kind of got into like music festivals, and then started kind of expanding my consciousness in that way. And then I kind of just was always like wanted to sing, and I was like, I want to sing again, but it wasn't happening. It just wasn't coming naturally. And then the partying and everything kind of led me to this place where I eventually got really sick, because I just wasn't respecting my body. Like I was having lots of fun, and I was really opening my consciousness, which I think was really, really important. But, you know, I wasn't sleeping enough. I wasn't eating well enough, like all of that. And so my body started to just shut down on me, and I ended up with like chronic fatigue, constant body aches and pains, constant headaches, like just, I was a mess, like emotionally. I had no idea what was going on with me. And the doctors were doing all these tests, and they was just like, there's nothing wrong with you. And my vision had started to change as well. And I was starting to like see what I now realize is like energy. But back then I just had no idea what it was. And so they were testing me for a brain tumor because of my vision and all of this stuff. And then eventually, when there was nothing, they had done every test, the doctor was like, there's nothing wrong. Like maybe you just have to change your lifestyle. And then like the penny just dropped, and I was like, oh, maybe like what I'm doing isn't good for me. And then what happened? And then I read the incredible book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Yes, that was my first book that I read that really shifted everything.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh my gosh. And I've connected with a few people that's the same. And that book just changed my life. It was like everything that I'd always wanted to know about life, about the universe, was just explained in this book. And I was like, this is what I've always like known. I've always known, like, and felt connected to this consciousness. I just didn't have the words to explain it, because it's just not taught in school or our society. And I was like, this is life. And then from that moment, it was like, boom, instant like awakening. Like my whole life just shifted. I just, you know, stepped into this space of really powerful consciousness, like started doing meditation retreats. Like my first, like 2 months later, did like my first, you know, 7-day silent retreat, and was just like deep in, booked like tickets to India, went and lived in India for 6 months, just got like really just into my healing and my my self-work, like getting to remember who I am. And so all that time I still wasn't singing. And so it was only, I started doing a bit of chanting with like the yoga, and I was like, oh my gosh, it feels so good to use my voice again. But apart from that, I still didn't know how. But I was just like, if I just keep focusing on my personal development, on, you know, really discovering who I am, then I just trusted like the singing will come. And so the turning point in terms of the singing coming back was when I did this course just in Melbourne with this amazing teacher, and it was called Elemental Voices, and it was singing all of these shamanic songs from all around the world. So we had like earth songs, water songs, air songs, and just singing these songs, I was like, oh, I can just sing songs about like spiritual stuff. Like I don't have to be, you know, writing songs. And so I started singing these medicine songs is what she called them. And that got me singing every day again. I was singing, you know, all about nature and the earth, and they were just really like beautiful, feel good songs. And then that kind of sparked me off. I started writing my own medicine songs, and I was like, I can use these songs for healing. Whatever I'm going through, I can write a song about it and use that as my healing process. And then kind of going on channeling light language, and realized that I could use that for my healing and self-activation and alignment. And so I started using that, and I was just using, like, figuring out kind of all of these little practices and really exploring them. And I was like, wow, this is actually really, really powerful. Like, this is connecting like my love of singing and then all of the, you know, spiritual work that I've been doing over the past couple of years, connecting those two into like this really magical, like, one union kind of thing. And yeah, I was just like, this is special. And I started to see the transformation it was having in me. And then I was like, all right, well, I got to share this with people. And so that's kind of where I've gotten to now. And then since I've started sharing it with people and just going even deeper into it, now the songwriting's coming back again, and the other things that I had really disconnected from are coming back as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And what were those pieces of transformation that you started to notice when you brought back the singing?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, it's a lot of joy. Like, I feel like singing, it's such a joyful, like, heart-opening, expansive experience, as well as being really, like, cathartic and, like, emotive. So it's kind of got these two things. Like, when you are feeling, if you are feeling sad or whatever, when you sing, you can just, like, let it all out, and you don't have to, you don't have to like consciously process it. And I think that's a trap that a lot of people get caught in when they're doing self-work, is that when, you know, we're consciously trying to process things, we're trying to understand things. And I find that that's really a trap for me and just gets me caught in my mind a lot longer. Whereas, you know, singing is this really like embodied practice. And so when I was first, how I actually started channeling light language, which for people that might not know, it's a vibrational, energetic form of communication. So it's you know, we're speaking in English right now, we know this word means this, but if we actually like go back to just the frequencies and what they, you know, the meaning that they kind of offer, like that's what light language is. And so what was happening is I was feeling all of these really like dense, heavy emotions. And I was like, I really want to sing to let these out. But I was like, but what song can I sing? Like, I don't even know what words to really express this. And so I was just like, oh, I'm just going to start singing in gibberish. And so I just was playing at my piano and just started singing in gibberish. And it just felt so good. And I was like, yes, I can release all of this without having to, you know, what the words are. And then as I kept doing that, and then over time, I started hearing about light language, and I was like, oh, that's exactly what I've been doing. And then I was like, and all these people were telling me like, you're this like galactic starseed, you're channeling all this. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know? But then as I went into it, I realized it was actually something so much bigger than I had realized. And then going on from there, I began to realize that I could, through my intention, actually direct the energies for healing and awakening within myself as well.
Wow, that's so magical. And I love the piece around just letting it flow through your body and having, you know, not that attachment to like the meaning of words.
Yeah.
Right? There's like such a power. Our bodies are so wise. Like, I've learned so much about my body, and I'm still learning through a lot of grief, like condensed grief that all happened within just like a year. Like all forms of grief. It was really like intense. And my body is still like she knows how to help me heal, you know, and like my whole job, what I've learned is just to like actually let it happen, you know. But we have to have these kind of practices like you with, you know, channeling your voice. And one of the practices that I've been doing, I'm actually getting back into it tonight, which I'm super excited about, is a practice called sensuous wisdom that one of my clients created. And it's based on the ancient practice of tuning into your womb. And it's like a tantric dance practice. It's not really dance, because when we think of dance, it's like choreographed, right? But this is more just like a deep listening and a witnessed movement. Maybe you're familiar with this type of like healing, but wow, I didn't even know that I had layers that needed to be shed until I started that practice. And like my first 4 practices in a row, I just bawled during my dance. Like, you know, your eyes aren't even open, they're just closed. And like, I don't even know what's happening. I'm not really sure what, you know, music is playing. I'm just letting my body do what it needs to do. And it was just like snotty nosed crying in relief. It was really amazing. So I'm sharing that because it's like these embodiment practices and like what you do with the voice, it's like such a tool for healing, right?
Because I've had plenty of snotty nose crying as well, like when, you know, you just are releasing something and it just feels so good to be releasing it and just like letting it go, whatever you've been holding on to. And, you know, like crying, it's such a beautiful release. And I guess you know, crying is one thing, but then singing is just another form of doing the same thing as what crying does for you, because crying is that release, but equally you can just use your voice and release all of that energy in exactly the same way. And yeah, I love what you're saying about the womb awareness and consciousness as well, because that's something that I've been really stepping into more and more deeply recently as well. And just as a way of really bringing my awareness into my body, like when we just focus on our womb space, I feel like it anchors all of our energy into our body, because for so much of my life I've always been like very like, you know, just giving energy always, and like my energy wasn't very contained. And so it's been and I've also quite floaty and like away with the fairies, and so just really more and more grounded like into myself. And when we focus on that womb space, I feel like it really tells our body that we're safe and that we're here and that it's safe to be present in our body. And that's something that I've actually also been practicing in terms of like being seen and sharing myself. When I try and keep my awareness a bit more grounded in my womb space, that helps me to be more present here and less fearful of being seen and that kind of thing.
Wow, I love that. I've never heard of that correlation around like, you know, kind of like an anchoring and safety is what I heard.
Yeah.
I love that. Ooh, that's good.
Yeah, it's something I just recently from a mentor that I've just been working with. Her name's Rachel Jane Groover, and she does the art of feminine presence. And so she talks about like this as being
I've heard of her.
really it's like this, she's all about authenticity and being seen and heard, and you know, so really kind of up your alley too. And you know, it is this thing of our feminine energy, and it's like we need to be fully anchored in that to use that feminine power. And she calls it being home. She's like all day every day I'm just, am I home, because this is my home. And I think it's different for men. Like she says, men, it's more like they need to be up around here in their chest, whereas for women we need to be most of our consciousness in our womb space.
Yes. Wow. Do you talk any about, or are you learning maybe, about the connection between like the womb or the yoni and the voice, like how those two energy centers? Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Is there
something that
anything?
I'm like is opening up for me and I'm learning about now, because I mean the most interesting thing that you might have heard, it's like the yoni and the vocal cords, they look the same. Like if you slice the vocal cords open, it's like a really similar shape. And so something that I've been practicing is just like when I'm singing, just making sure that I'm fully like relaxing that area, because just for so much of us, like we just tense that area unconsciously. It's like we're always just, you know, just tensing a little bit because we're, you know, we're not just fully relaxed. And so that's what I noticed, like even when I was singing, that I was just kind of tensing unconsciously. And so just like opening that space and then being able to open my voice, like as one opens, I feel the other really opens as well. And so for me, like I love to practice, you know, yeah, like working with them together. Like I know I'm in love making, like I love to really just express myself, like just fully if I want to. Like I love being silent as well, but then when, you know, when I feel like it, to just let loose and allow sounds to be expressed through me, I feel it's so healing as well for, you know, all of the tension and things that we do hold down there. So yeah, definitely going deeper into it, but I think just relaxation is like the core of it all. Yeah.
Yes, I found the same. Even the like, you know, during lovemaking or just in general, it just helps both areas relax so much. I love that. I think it just, for me, it comes back to just the power of our voices in general, of course, women and men and people, but especially as women with a history of having our voices shut down. Um, do you do any of that type of work or talk about women in particular, the healing of our voices? And is that a thing for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's like there's kind of so many areas that I'm interested in the voice, and so right now I'm kind of really, I've explored so many, and I'm really going deeper into what I find is most important for me. And I read something recently which really hit home about the witch wound, and how, you know, all women like hold genetic memory about being shut down and suppressed at that time for like sharing our gifts, sharing our magic, all of that kind of thing. And so that is like a key, you know, thing that has suppressed our voices. But then of course, you know, there's so much, yeah, so much more just every in our day-to-day lives, like just everything to do with the masculine and the patriarchy and all of that. It's just like women have been so shut down. And for me, I have tended, what I've realized works for me is less focusing on like, you know, this is what's happened to us and this is why I've lost my voice and all of that. And instead, like just singing, just using your voice and just doing it, and not focusing on what we need to heal, and instead just, you know, just doing it, just expressing, and all of that healing just happens so naturally. So I feel like
Allowing.
instead of going into the story and all of that, it's like just just sing. And you know, you might start really soft, you might be only making a tiny sound at the start, but then, you know, you might just start with like but then you might go ma, and just hear, as soon as you just hear your voice, like the littlest bit, someone that has experienced trauma or whatever, they just hear that the littlest bit, and they hear themselves, and they giving themselves that space, you know, in a really safe, you know, private space where no one's going to hear them, no one's going to judge them if it sounds good or not. It just doesn't matter. It's just about opening that up. And so you're just starting small, and then just, you know, letting your voice be heard. And you don't have to share it with anyone ever or whatever, but it's just this gradual process of allowing it to unfold and allowing your unique voice to emerge. And my kind of idea is that when you start doing that, naturally your voice is going to be more heard in your daily life. Naturally, you're just going to, you know, feel more confident to express yourself, and it can just, we can allow it to unfold in this really organic way, rather than being like, you know, forcing yourself to go and like stand up to someone or whatever, you know, just like letting it unfold really naturally.
Ooh, I love that tie-in of just how it helps with everyday communication as well. Really owning our voice and letting it flow. Yeah, which
Yeah.
Lord knows we all need that. Like
Definitely.
another thing
Yeah.
I was
spot, right? It's just like easily expressing ourselves through communication.
Yeah, well,
Wow.
it's like we've got all of these, if you think about like blocks in your throat chakra, like energetic blocks, if you just imagine like when you're singing, like the energy is just flowing so freely through there. So the blocks are just naturally going to disappear. You don't actually have to like work through them or anything. And I think a lot of my clients do say like, oh, I'm just expressing my truth and speaking my truth so much more. I'm like, I didn't even really teach you anything about that. Like they've just started doing it naturally because it's a natural side effect.
Yeah, I was going to say a very nice side effect. Wow. I love this. I want to talk a little bit about just self-expression in general, because it's something that it's actually the core of my mission in my own business. I help, women entrepreneurs. And really what it always comes back to for me is that the more that we fully express ourselves authentically in the moment, whatever feels good for us, the more that we will resonate and feel good and have more energy and, call in those that we're meant to serve. And so for me, it all comes back to self-expression. And I found in my own life that this is the most important thing that allows me to feel like I'm having fun and like I'm free and I'm fulfilled. So I'm curious for you, like, do you have a definition of self-expression or?
Yeah, well, I think for me, similar, like my whole life has been about self-expression. It is just who I am, and it's what I'm here to share. But what I've really realized lately is like just going even deeper into self-expression and actually just making sure we actually know who the self is. Because it's like, I feel like people can get caught up in like, I need to express myself, and really they're kind of mixing up the ego self and the divine source kind of self. And so, if someone's like, I'm really angry at you, so I just need to like express myself right now, it's like that has its place, but really that's expressing your ego personality self. Like if you are expressing your true self, which is your divine self, your source, you would always be coming from a place of unconditional love and appreciation and that kind of thing. So just for me, it's like really connecting with that true inner self first, and then expressing myself from that place. And so I think that's really powerful because it completely takes ego out of it. Like it takes all judgment and all comparison and everything out of it, and you're just expressing from that pure place. So I think that's the most important thing. And I think for me, that really comes with silence. And then my voice, expresses, or my dance or whatever expresses from that silence. So it's like going from the unmanifested into the manifested, and always having connection with that core essence. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much noise, and so many shoulds around how we should show up or what we should do or what we, need to like kind of we think it's to keep ourselves safe, right? Like, oh, I must do this and I must, speak this or say this or show up in this way because I need X, Y, Z. And I love that silent place, you're reminding everybody that that's really where the truth lies. And for me, sometimes that silent place does remind me that I need to tap into what I call my radiant rebel, which is the archetype of like the fierce feminine, the mama bear. I teach 3 different archetypes in my work, and that's been one that has been the hardest for me to embrace because I've been very afraid of being seen as like a bitch or not nice or, all those different perspectives that we have. And yet the more that I've just gotten silent and felt into that part of me, the more it's allowed me to be, to take a strong stand, not from a place of like shaming or making others wrong, but also still speaking my truth that might be a little bit polarizing, and doing it with, we can only ever do it with the best intentions that we have, right? We never know 100% how we're going to affect people. But for me, that's been a really big owning of my own truth and my own voice, is being able to not always come from this place that feels like pure love, but it's pure love within myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I know what you mean, and I love that. It's something that I'm stepping into more as well. I think it's like the fierce love and even the tough love. Like sometimes it is really tough love, and I actually learnt this really in a really challenging way recently, because I was asked to if something was okay, and I was like, okay, I've got to tune into like my unconditional love, and that's going to say like it's okay. And then the situation ended up really like biting me on the bum, and I realized like actually that wasn't okay, and I wasn't being unconditionally loving towards myself, because I actually wasn't respecting my boundaries, and I wasn't at a place where that was okay for me. And so I had to really then take a stand for my boundary. And I raged like really hard in that moment, and that actually felt so freaking good, because I've never like really allowed myself to rage, like, or really to yell. Like I've never really yelled in my life, and I've never really had the need to, but in this circumstance it was so like necessary and needed. And that ended up being an act of self-love for me, to actually allow that part of me to be expressed. And regardless of, even if it was connected in with my ego that was triggered and all of that, that's still, it doesn't matter like at all, because that is that was just my truth in that moment. And so we always need to give ourselves that permission to express anything that we need to express, but then being able to still come back to that center and see everything for what it is, that really it is all still this illusion, and of the manifested world, and still having that balance. But then once we see it clearly and we're the witness to it all, then we can just enjoy it all. And like I actually really enjoyed the rage, like, because I'm just like, wow, this is incredible. Like it's incredible to actually feel so deeply. Like it's so amazing to be a human and to be able to experience the spectrum of emotions. Like I didn't come here to just to just live a little heaven, like eternal. Yeah, like I came here to experience it all and relish in it all, like the dark and the light and everything in between. So very powerful stuff.
Yes. Oh, I love that. It reminds me of like the first time I ever really let myself yell at a partner that broke up with me. This was years ago, but it's coming to mind for some reason, where I'm like, wow, yeah, that was like the first time I really gave myself permission. I requested a Skype call with him. We didn't have Zoom at the time, we had Skype. And he got on the call, and I remember I had a mentor at the time who was like, I feel like you just need to do this for you. Like, just request for him to show up. He is a human, an adult who can say yes or no to actually come to the call, but you need to at least reach out and say, this is what you need. And wow, it was so funny. He was very like afraid. You could tell he was afraid of like what I was going to say. He like wore his like beaded shamanic like thing, like, oh, like, let me protect myself. And like, that was a little bit like eye roll for me, but he still showed up, grateful for that. And I just told him exactly how I felt and how it hurt. And like, it really like laid it out. And then we were done. And I was like, wow, that was awesome. Yay for me for like giving myself permission to do that, And I feel like we, me and you as people that are really passionate about self-expression and really showing up in your authenticity, it's like continuing to encourage people to really experience those different sides of themselves, so that we can all return to love, which is our most divine expression. But I think because we're human, like we need to come to peace with those parts of ourselves, or else they'll just kind of lay, inside of us like toxic waste, not getting any attention, or like, a little baby left alone or something. So Yeah.
Definitely. Like it all leads back to, you know, to that same source of love. And I
Yeah.
feel like, you know, depending on the situation, it's like sometimes something happens that annoys you or whatever, and you can instantly just be like in a place of love and you don't have to like actually express anything. But depending on how deeply, you know, it triggers you or whatever, then sometimes the only option is to express. And then I think it's about having really healthy ways to express, because like, you know, there's always a time and place to yell at your partner, and you know that's who I was yelling at as well that other time. There's times for yelling and everything, but then there's also times to be like, you know, really speaking like this to you isn't actually going to help the situation right now. I actually need to go away and and express in some other way, whether that, you know, is going and singing or dancing it out or shaking it out, or if it's going to the beach and just yelling out to the ocean or whatever. Like sometimes there's, you know, ways that are actually going to be more useful than, you know, than going directly to the person, because if you can express it and then come to them once you've actually processed it and come to more peace within yourself, then you know it can just instantly kind of switch.
Yes. Yeah. So important. Which is why I love that you do the work you do. It's just wow.
Yeah.
It's inspiring. It's inspiring me to find kirtan circles again. I used to go all the time.
Yes.
Back when I lived in Las Vegas, I lived there for 10 years, and there was an amazing kirtan circle that I went to. And I remember that feeling of just like, wow, like my own voice and then the collective voice and just the like joy and energy. And it's funny because I live in Santa Cruz, which is like one of the most like hippie towns in the whole US. And I've only been to one kirtan circle and I haven't even heard of any others. So I don't know, we'll see where there's one. I'm going to go research one now. So thank you for inspiring me.
Yeah, I haven't done kirtan in ages, but I just love it because it is like the energy that you feel in your body. Like it is so powerful. And I guess, and Sanskrit, you know, those languages are energetic languages. Like they're pretty much like, it's very similar to light language in terms of they're actually onomatopoeic. So like the sound actually like is the energy of what it means. Like one of my yoga teachers gives an example of like when you say teacher, it's got this energy, and then when you say like guru, like it really gives you that sense of like that powerful, you know, all-knowing force within you. And so using those, you know, a language like Sanskrit, it just raises your vibration so much because you're actually using these sounds that just do exist at this higher kind of frequency. And so to connect with that, it just instantly raises you up to that as well.
Yeah. Ooh, this leads me to want to ask you, do you have any thoughts on the energy of names? Like I'm asking because I know a lot of people that are in my circles in the entrepreneurial space. Recently, actually, we had a conversation around like names and reclaiming different names for ourselves based on like our own authenticity of, you know, the energy of who we are. Do you have any thoughts around like names?
Yes, well, it's interesting that you asked that actually, because I've had like a few kind of names. So I was born Isabella, and my family always called me Bella. And then as soon as I went to school, everyone just started calling me Izzy. So like Izzy, Izzy, Izzy. And they're very different energies. And so through my whole schooling, all the way until I finished high school, I was called Izzy. And to me, Izzy is like this really like Izzy, Izzy, like it's very like zzz, like buzzy, and that was very much me. Like I was very just like buzzy and fun and kind of always really high energy. And then ever since I finished school, I wanted to be called Bella again because my family the whole time had always called me Bella, and that felt like who I really am. It just felt like more like home. And so I was trying to change my name to Bella, but everyone was just still calling me Izzy, Izzy, Izzy. And so eventually one day I was like, all right, I just have to do this. And I'm just like, I'm Bella, change my name on Facebook like to Bella. And then the past couple of years I've been called Bella, and it's shifted. Like I have just stepped into a whole new dimension of me, and it's like a lot softer, it's a lot more contained, a lot more just peaceful and present. Like I don't feel anymore that I have to always be like this high energy, buzzy kind of person. Like now it's just enough for me to just be. And sometimes I'm not going to want to talk or whereas I used to always be making conversation and be this social kind of butterfly. But now I'm just kind of at peace in myself, and I'm happy to just be in this softness. And then, which leads me to think like Isabella, my full name, like I've never really been called that. And so maybe that is like an integration of both of those energies, which are both parts of me. So now as I've stepped into just Bella, I'm wondering, does Izzy still have something for me? Or that is, part of me? Does she still have something for me? And can I integrate those parts of me? And so that's kind of been just my own personal journey with it. But I also did this amazing soul plan reading with a healer in my area, and they use like the I think it's something to do with like the Hebrew letters or the Kabbalah, and they decode your name into these certain energies. And so I gave my full name, Isabella Baring, and then he tells me all of the energies in numbers that my soul has come here to master in this life. And so like the number 33 meant like creativity and inspiration or something. And pretty much all the numbers that I got were all to do with like creativity, self-expression, like just all of this stuff. And I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, like, yes, this is me. Like, how do they know this? And I just found that so fascinating. And there's like some numbers that I'm mastering, more in the first half of my life. And then there's some numbers that I'm mastering later in the later years of my life. And it just resonated so deeply. So there's, lots of magic in that kind of way of looking at things too.
Yeah. Ooh, I love it. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So it's like a new level of personal branding, for when we talk about entrepreneurs. And I've been, over the years, I owned my brand as Jess Tomlinson versus Jessica, which is my full name. And it's so interesting how much bad feedback people just don't sometimes like the whole Jess. And yet for me, that was really an ownership and a healing around this fun side of me that I've felt like has been too much, the lighter side of me, the like dreamer, and I've gotten a lot of comments around, my hair color, like, oh, dumb blonde, and people not seeing my substance, and that really bothering me. But I knew that part of me, that Jess, was really like that side, that natural essence of who I am. And so I own that as my branding. And just recently, I've also been contemplating like, is it Jessica now? I don't really know. Like, it doesn't really feel totally like me. And then now I'm like debating, well, is it Jessica Renee, which is my middle name, and I dropped the Tomlinson? I don't know. So I'm in the question. Just like you, it sounds like. So.
Well, I guess it's like when you make that decision, you'll be stepping into a new chapter in your business and a new expression of you. And I think sometimes we do need to work on different parts of ourselves. Like I needed to balance like Izzy being Izzy for so long with being just Bella for a bit so that I could come into balance. And then there's people that change their names completely. And the healer who I was just talking about, who did the soul plan reading, he said that people change their names because they actually need to work with that energy for a little bit as well. So, maybe I just need to be Sarah for a little bit because there's something that their name really has for me. And, it's funny because when we were kids, me and my brothers would always change our names. And when I was in kinder, I called myself Xena for 2 years. I don't know if you know Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh, yeah.
And for 2 years in kinder, I called myself Xena, and I would only reply to that. And my parents had no idea if I actually knew my real name because I was only like 4 and 5. And then I went to primary school and they're like, what's your name? And I said, Isabella. And they were just like, she knows her name.
Oh, wow.
And so we need to work with these energies sometimes. And so, maybe whatever you end up stepping into, that could be really what you need to take your business to the next level or whatever.
Yeah. And I drew a fairy card. I love my fairy cards.
Oh, me
Fairy
too.
cards. I drew a new career, which is really interesting. And my partner drew new home. So I'm like, okay, what's all this newness for us? Like it was really interesting. We drew them at the same time. So who knows?
Wow, big change happening.
Yeah, who knows? It's really interesting. So, oh my gosh. Isabella, this has been amazing. Isabella Bella. Is there anything that we haven't talked about or I haven't asked you that you would really love to share as we wrap up?
Oh, I don't know. Like what's coming is that I could sing a little song for you, but I just don't know what song.
Take your time. We have all day.
Yeah. Well, what's coming to me is maybe just a little medicine song from my online course, which is called The Divine Aligned Voice. And so in the course, like every week, there's a different medicine song that we journey with, that we sing every day to really, cultivate that joy of singing, but also to actually rewire some of the patterns in our minds. So, if you are feeling a bit not so good, like things are going on, to just like stop focusing on that and just like stop and sing, and you can remind yourself, of what's really important. So the one that's coming to me is one from week 2. So I'll sing it for you and then I can explain a little after. I am source energy, blessed with the human body that feels joy and clarity. When I align with my divinity, what would source think? Oh, what would source feel? I choose to align with love to heal. What would source think? Oh, what would source feel? I choose to align with love to heal. And so you just sing that over and over again. And so that one's a really great one, because when you like realize you're just overthinking something, or you're just focusing on something that isn't serving you, you can sing that song and you remember, like, I am source. You really connect with that truth of who you are. And then it's like, what would source think? And so then you can imagine, like, even if you can't in that moment feel, your connectedness with all of the universe, you can still just imagine, like, what would source think about this? And so you just get to raise that perspective, like being that eagle, and you just see everything, from the eyes of love. And it helps me to just really get back to just fully loving and appreciating the moment.
Thank you so much for doing that for everyone. That was so beautiful. And thank you for being such a gift and for being on this show and shining your light. I'm super grateful for you. Why don't you share with everyone how you'd like to connect with them, or how they can connect to you?
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, my Instagram is Isabella_Baring, and my website is just isabellabaring.com. So you can message me on either of those. And yeah, I would love to hear from you.
Great. And Isabella's episode is episode number 18. So you can find all the links, anything that we talked about, ways to connect with her over at jessicatomlinson.com/show-18. And we will see you guys in the next episode. Thanks again, Isabella.
Thanks so much, Jess. It's been such an honor to be here with you. Lots of love.